The typical American family needs $11,434 per year in additional income just to maintain the same standard of living they had when Joe Biden took office. For those following along at home, that is the inflation Paul Krugman says we beat at, quote, very little cost. Of course, we didn't beat anything. That inflation is forever. The number comes from a new study from the U.S. Senate Joint Economic Committee, which tallied up the change in price since January of 2021, when Joe Biden took office, and coincidentally, just before inflation took off to 40-year highs. They then compared that to hourly pay, which has lagged inflation since January of 2021, also coincidentally when Joe Biden took office. Note, in normal years, the economy grows and we get richer, and that's what happens if Washington stays out of the way, since the actual people build more than they destroy, while Washington destroys for a living. The main categories making Americans struggle include food, transportation, housing, and energy, which together make up almost 80 cents on every additional dollar spent. And $11,400 is just a starting bid. Other studies have found even larger gaps, so the Ludwig Institute found it's actually closer to $14,000. Meanwhile, the inflation is far worse in some states, thanks to a combination of the Fed pumping up housing costs, along with refugees from failing blue states. So in Colorado, Utah, and Arizona, all currently infested by Californian refugees, it is much higher. Colorado, for example, it's past $15,000 in additional costs per year. Now, CBS, to their credit, does blame government spending with the obligatory media excuse of supply chains, which ended 2 years ago. Yet the inflation gap continues. A new Bankrate survey found that just over the past 12 months, 60% of working Americans say their income has lagged inflation. Note that's people with jobs is even worse for people on fixed incomes, and that is long since the supply chain excuse has passed. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. Even as mainstream media shamsplains Joe Biden's miracle economy, people can see with their own eyes what's happening to their paychecks and their grocery bills. One recent study found that just 14% of Americans think they're better off since Joe Biden took office, even worse than the dismal numbers in those tragicomic days of Jimmy Carter. Meanwhile, 76% of Americans say the country is on the wrong track, which is comparable to the depths of the 2008 crisis. The media wants to blame Joe Biden's age or his media portrayal, in a lapdog media no less, but Americans can see what's actually happening to them. For now, what growth we've got in both GDP and jobs are floating on trillions in government spending, so welfare and wars, and yet more trillions of personal debt from credit cards to buy now, pay later. Neither of these are sustainable. Both federal and personal debt keep snowballing as new debt raises the interest costs on the old debt. You have to borrow more just to pay what you've already borrowed. What's the end game? Either Congress cuts it out, slashes spending, maybe even hold back on that third and fourth war. Of course, none of that is happening anytime soon. So the alternative is something breaks, whether it's financial markets or defaults on that mountain of personal debt Americans are currently drowning in. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.